I just want to welcome everyone to this first Paul Rand lecture series of the spring semester. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Julian Bittner, senior critic and acting co-director of studies in graphic design, along with Susan Sellers, who is also here with us. I'm just going to provide a brief introduction as Ella and their close collaborator and guest today, Meg Onli, they're going to speak for themselves and their respective practices in a minute. But just to say a few words, Ella is a design studio based in LA, originally founded by Jukes-Hudson and Stephen Serrato and Dante Carlos in 2013. They were all graduates of and later teachers at and currently teaching at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, which also happens to be my undergraduate alma mater. Today, the studio is led by River and Stephen and described as woman and minority owned practice. It's based on a, quote, foundation of mutual respect, honesty, and trust, unquote. They strive to create work that's surprising, rich, and humanistic. They prioritize and elevate marginalized voices and develop empathetic, collaborative, and respectful relationships both within their studio and with clients and partners outside of it. Their studio's output encompasses a wide variety of work, shaped, I think, in part by the local economy, which includes book design, exhibition graphics, identity systems and campaigns, design for the web, and also film titles and music packaging. That's sort of the LA bit, I thought, particularly LA bit. They're also the creators of Design Atlas, an online resource and a kind of primer centered around basic typographic and design principles. Since the fall of 2021, Meg Onli has been the director and curator of the Underground Museum, co-founded by artists Noah and Karen Davis in 2012. The UM for short, and I'm going to paraphrase their mission statement here, is an art and cultural center based out of 4 converted storefronts in the Arlington Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles. The institution holds that art should be, quote, an essential part of a vibrant, just, and healthy society, unquote. And one of its chief aims is to bring world-class art and art experiences traditionally associated with large institutions to diverse and local audiences for free. So we're very excited and appreciate them agreeing to come and share their work and ideas with us today. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the Yale School of Art. And I also want to say a special thank you to Anna Lobo for the wonderful digital poster that's now on the front page of our website. So thank you, Anna. And with that, I will hand it over to Ella and Meg. Thank you.
Thank you for that intro, Julian. And thank you to Susan and Larissa and for Sheila de Bretteville and the students for inviting us. We're super happy to be here and excited to be sharing our work with y'all.
Sorry, I had to find the unmute button. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Yes, thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you, Meg, for joining. We recently put our bio up on our website, and it's sparked a lot of curiosity. So I'm going to go through it and elaborate on it a little bit. Ella is a woman and minority-owned design studio. This is how I see us, as road dogs from different worlds. But I really like that statement because I like making other people say it. It seems to make them somewhat uncomfortable and kind of nervous, so that's always a bonus. We're based in Los Angeles. This is our teeny little corner of the city. And this is in a business district mixed with residential on North Figueroa. These are artist spaces that, have been occupied by artists for a long time, over a decade. This is a recently renovated Victorian house with a very neat backyard, and this is a really chaotic tire shop, and these weird convergence of these weird things is kind of typical of Highland Park at the moment. This is our front door. This is the typographic design that we see every day that surrounds us, and the type that inspires us. Please look at this R. Appreciate the brilliance of this amazing R. Also street poetics, accidental poetry, verbal and visual, identities, and the view from inside. Stephen, I couldn't figure out why I took this picture, but do you see why I took it? He used to
yeah, the dude.
So in addition to using the studio as a place to make work, we pre-pandemic were hosting events that were oftentimes put on by our students, and they would be performances, art shows, music related, also exhibiting the work of our close friends. Hopefully we can get back to this. And occasionally a place where you might see a little pipsqueak running around. Steph is looking kind of spent, but family, present along with friends and students and colleagues. So we kind of missed that. We bring multiple perspectives to the table for every project. So we have Gabby Pulgar, Karina Wynn, Stephen Serrato, and myself. And this is the current crew. We share a sense of responsibility for what we put into the world. This relates to many things: messaging, the way we use our platform, the types of projects that we take on, but also just the way that we exist and move through life. Meg, maybe you can, if you want to touch on this later, we can, but sure. I encourage everybody to we're going to have to abbreviate a lot, unfortunately. So please kind of seek these things out on your own if we don't have time to go in depth. Creative research plays a major role in our process, and this just means that we're often making things as we're researching, and they're material experiments, even if they don't make it into the final result, it's still a very important part of the process. And then creative research also means getting out of the studio and listening to what the city has to teach us about communication and symbols and language. No BS.
River, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, yes.
I believe your microphone is scratching against your mouse or sweater.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, that is better.
I'll hold it out. This is technically a shop that's out in the desert. It's not in LA, but I just loved this sign, so I had to include it. Mutual trust is essential. This relates to the fact that everything that we make requires the effort of a team, and that we need to trust in each other's expertise. But it also means that our clients need to trust us if we're going to make anything interesting. We prioritize marginalized voices. This is a perfect example of that. This is Emma Villanueva in the Zocalo in Mexico City, I believe, teaching a free life drawing class to the public, but using this as an opportunity to discuss kind of urgent issues of that time that were affecting Mexico City. And I've looked at this image so many times, and there's so much to see here, and there's so much power, you know, visible power in what it is she's doing. And this was part of a show curated by Irene Satsos and Daniela Lieja Quintanar. Below the Underground, Renegade Art and Action in 1990s Mexico. It was a wonderful, like really ambitious effort to recreate art of that time that was temporary and ephemeral. These artists were working on the margins outside of institutions, you know, in making installations in their bathrooms, public performances, creating spaces to gather, and you know, music related events. And in addition to that, publishing and, you know, what we might call bootleg publications, reproducing texts and distributing them. And this is one of the things I really do hate to abbreviate because it's such an important show, but there is a catalog, and the ephemera that you saw in that slide earlier is part of the package. So Irene wanted the catalog to really embody the ephemeral quality of some of the work. So there's a mix of music and printed material and patches, and then this is a little misleading. I'm showing you lots of images, but the book has over 147,000 words in both languages. So it was really important to Irene that she invests the time and effort into making all of the text bilingual. And this is a really important resource that is self-published by the Armory Center for the Arts. So seek it out, and hopefully your library can acquire it and include it in their collection.
The recent publication that we put together with the curator, Howie Chen, Godzilla, the Asian American Arts Network. It's a very important group, and I'd like to read the slide right here. Godzilla was founded in 1990 as a New York-based collective group of Asian Pacific Islander American visual artists and curators dedicated to education and social change through art. With exhibitions, meetings, and printed materials, Godzilla seeks to increase the visibility and opportunities of its constituents while helping to preserve their diverse cultural histories. So the book is a compendium of all like correspondence, publications. We reprint 100% scale, some of the newsletters, all of the newsletters that they produce, actually articles, artifacts that were also related, part of, and outside of their group, they wrote a lot of essays for other catalogs and stuff like that. So Godzilla was really writing themselves into a history, an art history that had forgotten them. So they took it upon themselves to create their own exhibitions. And we're also social activists. And Howie Chen did a great job at compiling all of these things into one volume. In his own words, the purpose of this book is to detail the active social and political life of Godzilla and its members, and to provide insight into the collective's founding anarchistic ethos, which has become legend. I believe there is much to learn from Godzilla's work. Looking to its history can inform our critical practices, research, and art making today. And the sheer volume, this thing is 552 pages. It really is, you know, a monster of an object. Like it was very comprehensive, let's say. But like, there were probably well over, you know, 1,000 documents that could have made this thing. But you know, Howie's editing and curation definitely held together the narrative. So it's still comprehensive. And this is a publication we did some years ago, I think 2018, called Map Points. And Map Points is one of the, I think, yeah. So Map Points is a project by the artist Guadalupe Rosales, and she holds a Instagram account called Map Points, and also she started the Veteranas and Rucas Instagram, and we were fans of that handle, and we reached out to her. We're like, whoever's doing this is doing something interesting. I knew it wasn't just like something for Instagram. It was something beyond that. We reached out to her. We did a studio visit, and that's when we learned about the Map Points archive, because she had been dealing with it. She had ephemera everywhere, and we started talking about that. And then a couple of years later, the potential for a publication arose through Little Big Man Publishing, a photo book publisher here in Los Angeles. So Guadalupe reached out to us, and we helped her put this thing together. There's many contributions from people that she's met through Instagram, plus her personal archive, and then archive of her local community, her friends, essentially. And the book compiles ephemera, publications, and photography from all around the 90s rave scene and East Los Angeles. So these are some spreads from that publication. I think one thing is like, the subtitle is a collective memory, and it truly is that. It's basically, a community photo album, if you will, really. And it's documenting history that many haven't seen. They may have seen the likes of other subcultures or even other views of the rave scene, but to see, brown bodies, East Los Angeles, doing these, in these pages is very unique, and that's why it holds a dear place in our heart.
And also just an important part of the history of the city. Oh. LA is a place that people have a lot of misconceptions about. And it's so vast, and there's so much to know, and it means completely different things to different people. So this being an important part of the history of LA also, and how our city is defined.
One of my favorite parts. This is part of the end matter. I condensed it for the slide, but what Lupe had compiled all of the names into a Word doc of all the different party crews. So we, in the back matter of the book, we placed them all. And there's some
Please screenshot this if you don't have access to the book, because there is so much genius on this single spread. I noticed mind crime hookers yesterday. Like, it does not get better than that. Okay, we come with many questions and conversations lead us toward the truest solution. This relates to teaching, but it also relates to kind of coming to understanding a subject through multiple entry points, and coming with questions as a way of digging deeper into topics. So this is called Design Atlas, and it's a project that initially Dante and I initiated, and it was a very kind of practical tool that we felt we needed in the classroom. And it has gone through many evolutions. It's been very kind of slow going, but I think it's finally in a really good place. And it's now a grad class at Art Center that's offered once a year. And I would say there's a lot of benefits to this as a tool, but the biggest one is that for students who are just kind of coming to understand design, to show them how these basic terms are defined in many different ways. So even a single term, the way it could be interpreted, or the way a design tactic could be used and applied. And it's at a really good point now because we have so many contributors. And even though it's an edited, curated, like sequenced resource, we've had a lot of students come through and contribute and bring their own perspective, lots of things that are bilingual or in other languages. And this was designed closely with Folder Studio, who's also another great design studio here in LA. So again, I encourage you to check it out. We embrace complexity and contradiction. Logic appeals to us, so does humor and humility. And every project is an opportunity for growth. And this is where I want to bring Meg in. And Meg, again, we were talking a little bit before the presentation, but Meg is a longtime collaborator. We've been working together on books and identities for exhibitions for 5 years at least. And I'm always, when I look at the things that we make together, I'm always in awe by the end of it that I got to play some role in making these books. And these are also really unique and amazing resources. So Meg, I don't know what do you want to let the students know about what you do, or if you want to just jump into
We should just jump in. Yeah, okay. I feel like, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's also amazing to see your guys' lecture. I don't think I've ever seen this before, you talking about your practice. And really quick, just to say, every book that you guys covered, I literally own, and I can see in front, like I can see Irene's book. I just got Godzilla. Map Points is in the display case right now at the Underground Museum, and people keep coming up to me saying, that's a really rare book, it's really expensive. And I'm like, yeah, don't touch it. It's mine and it's staying in there. But I'm a curator. I think I only have 20 minutes that I can talk, and then I gotta bounce to installing another show. But I wanted to maybe go through some slides and then we'll talk some process. And this is my first show, Speech Acts, which was at the IC in Philadelphia. And I want to give a shout out to Ryan and Other Means, who did design on this show. Directly behind me, Ryan, I did not even think about you being here, but is the poster that you guys designed for Speech Acts. And this show was looking at kind of like, I'm in my late 30s. So I was really thinking about kind of my generation of, I mostly work with Black artists, contemporary Black artists that were thinking about experimental poetry. So the first person you saw was Martine Sims. On the left is Camila Janan Rashid. To the right, those larger pieces are Tony Lewis. And then directly in front of us in the vitrine is Stephanie Jamison. And for me, I was really thinking about the fact that a lot of institutions, this is 2017 when the show came out, love talking about language shows. I think MoMA had a language show, the Getty had a language show. People love talking about experimental poetry, but there was always just like 2 Black artists that appeared in any of these types of shows. And poetry is inherently like incredibly Black. And so I wanted to kind of come back and say, well, how could we reapproach this show and really think about a group of people that are thinking about experimental poetics? But I am like a curatorial nerd. So like for me, I'm really thinking about like frameworks, like the framework of Speech Acts, which is thinking about the limitations of language and the ways that Blackness, I mean, really race, class, gender expression, sexual orientation, all sort of fail within language and how we can sort of encapsulate those things. So you're seeing this kind of perfectly with Camila Janan Rashid's piece. It's language is falling apart, it's being warped, it's sort of breaking. And so for me, I was thinking a lot about that within the show, but I think there's artists from the 1980s that could be in this show, artists from the 1960s. You can kind of pick up this framework and move it to another time. Can we go to the next slide? This is Tiana Nikia McLaughlin's work. within this show as well. And then the last person in the show, and I don't know if we have a photo, is Ajibade Khalil Huffman. We also had a full classroom space for Claudia Rankin's Racial Imaginary Institute, and we taught a reading series out of this space, which was kind of amazing because you'd hear people arguing with each other like on a Saturday when people would be coming through to see the show, which was just kind of an amazing process to literally be in dialogue about poetics. And Philly has a really strong poetic history. We also worked with Morgan Parker, who's done the poster. She did the text for the poster behind us. And then I also worked with Ugly Duckling Press, who designed a full limited edition printed suite of poems from Simone White. Next slide, River. Maybe jumping into the prelim sketches.
Yeah, so we wanted to give some insight into the process. And, you know, we often show a couple of really different ideas initially. And this was the one that was chosen. And Dante this is pivotal in this design and a concept that related very much to language and trying to push language and have it present in as many ways possible on the pages. So, you know, translating the page numbers to words, letting the notes coexist with the essay text. But also what was core to this direction was the idea that we would give each paragraph its own page. And so we wanted to just kind of see how that would change the experience of reading. I remember we talked a lot about the way a book that is intended to be read looks versus books that you kind of flip through or that are very much kind of image driven. So that was a priority. It's a very small format. This was the outcome. So you can see it went through some evolutions, but the structure overall is very much text and language driven, with imagery coming in at intervals as kind of disruption to the text. What does a table of contents look like that's driven by language? And then imagery from the exhibition. You know, giving everything the necessary space. And then Meg's text, and I had forgotten this, but Meg, do you want to talk about the way you wrote it?
Yeah, so kind of knowing the layout of the book, I mean, usually the curator's text is the last thing to come in because we take the longest to actually meet the deadline. And so I knew that we were going to be working with every page was going to be a paragraph. I knew that this was maximal text. And I think it's like important to remember thinking about that because you're going to see it in the other shows. Like there's certain things that carry forth in the other publications that we do, which for me, there can never be enough text on a page. Like I'm totally happy just having text all over the place. But I really thought about enhancing and really working with the footnotes, making sure that the footnotes kind of became their own other essay. I also thought a lot about the pacing. So like suddenly you're seeing single sentence paragraphs, things like that, that really sort of reflected more experimental poetry just because I knew kind of how the book was going to be laid out. So there's a lot of ways in which the design influenced the way that I was going to actually write the text and really think about the text for this. And maybe I forgot like something to say at the very start of this is that although I'm a curator and now a museum director, my background from like high school until I literally left for grad school to study art history was working in printing. So I worked on print presses in high school. I have managed tons of production coordination for publications. I've done pre-press work for Oregon State University's press. I manage a print shop at SAIC. So for me, I'm always really approaching my projects thinking about books. And when River mentioned the fact that I have kind of, I mean, I'm a very particular client, maybe I should say. I come in with a lot of things that I'm like, I hate this, I don't like this. And we're kind of always pushing against that, which you'll see in a moment. But there's a few things that I said instantly that all my books kind of have to have. I collect art books. I hate when they get damaged. So I always want a book that you feel like you can throw in your bag and be totally fine with and not be concerned that it's going to get damaged. I also love Walker books. I love the Walker's publications program, but their books are fucking expensive. You look at those books and they're like $50, $60. And so I always want my books to be $40 and under. I wanted this book to be $16. That was like the goal. It was 20, but like getting really close and thinking about me, like as a client, like if I'm walking in and I'm like, oh, I just buy books sometimes because they look cool, not because I actually really care about the artist or the book or anything. I just like the tricks in the book. And if it's within a certain price point, I'll always buy it. And so I'm always thinking about myself as a consumer as well and what sort of attracts me to this. Should I say this about the book, River, about my feelings of this, or?
Well, let's see.
For a second.
I want to go through the way we landed on it.
Oh, yeah.
Really quick. Okay. So, sorry. We spend a lot of time in the Art Center library, which is this super amazing resource. And oftentimes we're looking at the materials that books are made of and the books as objects, obviously, in addition to reading them and researching design. Side note, this series called The New American Abstraction from 1950 to 1970 features 50 artists, and 2 of them are women and both of them are white. So this is also what you encounter at the library, is like these volumes that touch on the same big artists over and over and over, countless publications about these same superstar artists, which can be exhausting and feel alienating, but you also make discoveries. And I had no idea that there was an erotic art book society. So we also were looking at the types of things that happen to books when they enter in the library and the things you find inside of them. And I picked this up, and it was obviously at one time a soft cover that had been rebound in an effort to archive it, or to I always forget this word, to give it a longer life with the buckram cloth and adhering the original cover. And I remember texting Stephen and Dante and saying, oh, I found the cover for Speech Acts. So the materials of the book are also speaking very much to the tradition of reading in the library. And I came to find out later Meg's feelings about the cover, and I want her to share.
Not the cover. I mean, I love the spine. So let me just say, I love this book now, but the spine also felt really important to me. Like, this is literally the first show I ever curated, and it felt like this just really special moment with a lot of other Black queer people who were in the show. It felt like this moment that I've been working towards to actually create a show. And I really wanted to sort of emphasize that with like this collective spine, which I really loved, just having everyone's name on this and not feeling like, you know, oftentimes it's just the curator's name or the editor's name, which we have on Ulysses, which you'll see later. And I think for me, this just felt like what this book was. I had a really hard time accepting this book. I would say I hated it for the first like 3 months of owning it. And I remember one night, I don't think I told you guys this, I was going to bed and I had like Speech Acts laying on the pillow next to my bed. And I finally was like, oh, I do like it. I love this book now, but I think it really taught me kind of 2 things of like how I work with Ella and maybe why we work so well together. But also the very first thing for me was it's really hard to take your ideas and have someone else translate them. And I think oftentimes clients, as oftentimes artists I talk to, other curators I talk to, because I have a lot of people that approach me and want to talk about books because I'm like the book curator. And they all have an idea of what they want their book to look like. And I always come in with mood boards and I have a sense of, you know, the ideas that I have. And Ryan definitely knows from working with me, I'm not maybe the easiest client. I have like certain things I definitely want. but I always pick the things I don't like. So I pick things that I instantly am like, oh, I hate this. Like the amount of things I hate that end up in our books that I end up liking just because I think it's my personal taste, I kind of push against, because the reason I work with designers is because I recognize that I like the things I like and the things that I instantly would gravitate towards, I've already seen before. I've already seen, you know, the style of book that I thought I wanted. And to be able to have a book that suddenly looks very different than anything else on the shelf is really important to me. And so I have to trust everyone at Ella to like produce that book and really like get us there.
Yes. Best soundbite ever. Every client needs to hear that. Please make sure that makes it into the recording, please. Yes, and I guess that's the other thing I wanted to call out is that, you know, we don't work with Meg because we all see things the same way. I mean, I think Stephen and I have a very like, we understand where each other's coming from after working together so many years. And so there's not a lot of pushback between us in terms of the design we make. It's more kind of celebrating and encouraging. And then we enjoy having the kinds of conversations that stem from Meg's projects. And we appreciate that the only reason that these things exist in the world was because Meg was willing to move forward with something that she didn't feel comfortable with. And it's necessary. If you want to make something that stands out and is memorable and strikes people, it's going to involve, you know, getting out of your comfort zone and taking those risks. And so I really just want to say that I appreciate that and thank you.
CPT. So I'm going to try and make this short for a very long show, but after I curated Speech Acts, I created it's a 3-part show called Color People Time. And it's taking this Black vernacular phrase of CPT of, you know, kind of always arriving late and thinking about it kind of in a lot of different ways. And so I really wanted to think about like temporal disruption. So there's 3 different shows. They're called Mundane Futures, Quotidian Past, and Banal Presence. And that's the order that they sort of unravel. I was really basing this off of Okwe and Wazer's post-war series. And for me, I was feeling a lot of just like imposter syndrome after like curating my first show and getting a lot of attention for it. I was like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And I think for me, I always, as a curator, want this kind of challenge within my shows. And so I wanted to curate 3 shows within this 750 square foot space and have no architectural interventions. And so the only thing that could happen is artwork is changing, text is changing, and then wall color is changing. This is Quotidian Past with Matthew Angelo Harrison. And so for me, design becomes a really large part. I mean, this is the most oversimplification of this show, but to get us to the part of thinking about design, it was really important to me that, that I kind of try out this experimentation. Like it really was an experimental exhibition. It lasted over the course of an entire year. They go literally back to back. And so really trying to like create these exhibitions as standalone, distinct things, also understanding that they're in these really, really small places. And one of the reasons I cited it in this back room of the ICA is that there just is a really long history of marginalized artists being relegated to the back room, you know, the hallway, the basement. The amount of times that I've traveled to see shows that have been like literally these tiny things, but have had larger marketing plans around them just because they're marginalized and museums want to use them to say, hey, like we're woke, we're showing Nicolene Thomas, but it's like a little hallway, which is not the same thing right now. And I think we're in a different cultural moment, but for me, it was really important. And you're kind of seeing that in the back here. Actually, will you go back really quick, River? Behind Michelle, no, where you were the last slide that you were just at. There we go, perfect. You actually see the exhibition text. It's all stays within that same space. And there is also like these pamphlets. So there's like, just at the end, people were just complaining that there's so much text in the show. The original essay is like 500 words. So just maximal text again. but maybe jumping into the research portion.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it being a show in 3 chapters. I remember that was a part of the early discussion.
Totally.
And we also talked about what we didn't want, and we didn't want to necessarily tap into the time aspect of it because Meg felt like that had been done a million times. And it also wasn't as simple as that. So we started looking at mundane aspects of displaying, collecting, and exhibiting art. So things that happen behind the scenes, the methods used for archiving and organization, the systems that are in place for something as simple as an object label that you might not think of. And so in this circumstance, the first prelim related to using that as a more visible framework. So the things that kind of go unnoticed becoming larger and more visible. And then there was another approach where we wanted to try to build in the phases of the show into an identity in a way that felt natural. So looking at the way that we could weave text in and thinking of the past, present, future, and how that could be represented. And then this is what happens sometimes where we take aspects of one direction and integrate it into the other. And so we were we spent some time trying to bring them both together. And this was the end result.
Which is huge. I mean, seeing the big difference between the initial drafts. I mean, I think looking at this, I felt like the more in my career that I've learned to like rewrite and have drafts, it's interesting coming back and seeing your guys' process, because those initial ones are not this, and where it gets just through reworking and rethinking. I mean, I love the entire identity for this project. But looking at that initial one, I could see where some designers would be like, here it is, it's done. And I'm like, no, it's not. It is not done. We are going back. Even looking through these posters, I was joking with Stephen when we first got that, the very left poster, the gray one, Stephen turned it in to me and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, would you hang that up in your office? And Stephen was like, no. And I was like, well, then you got to redesign it, because I don't want a poster that you're not going to hang up. Like, that's just not how we're moving in this project. And the second poster took so many fewer iterations. And then the final poster, which has a full Cameron Rollin, like Cameron Rollin's work is like never on promotional material, because there is so much text that has to be part of the caption with the image. When I first met Cameron to work together, I was like, what if we got a Cameron Rollin piece on a promotional, piece for the show? And I remember when you guys turned in this poster, like, I think this was it. There was one draft, like I only saw this and I was like, I love it. We're done. And it's just the year of us thinking through this together was super interesting.
I would say that, like, towards the second and the third, we were just kind of like jamming. The system actually worked in so many different situations, and you're kind of learning it at the very beginning. You're trying to establish all these rules and these things, but once you start designing all these different collateral and understanding how language and image are working, it just flows a lot more. It's more fluid essentially.
And these are art form ads. The back, it's like to see this in art form. It's like, again, just maximal text coming back from SpeechX, like that very final ad that it just has this huge quote on it. I just really love this. I don't know. I think there's a way in which text also has this like texture to the page, and the way that you guys sort of approach this, you're just not seeing the same type of thing in art form,
And then this extended to motion pieces. These are the pamphlets that were handed out. And I remember being interested in the reading list that you included there. And the book. You want to talk about the cover? You want me to move through this one? Or
I can say about the cover. So this book, which we'll get through and kind of see some of the inside, I think you guys reminded me recently, like I had a very clear idea of what I wanted the cover to be. I wanted it to be Laker colors, which Lakers did win that year in the finals. But I really wanted a book that just felt, there's something about this show that one of the things I didn't say is that a lot of ways that this show was dealing with kind of the mundane ways in which white supremacy exists. And I don't mean in the sense of microaggressions. It is like the absolute large glaring aggressions that we continue to ignore constantly and not want to deal with. And so for me, I thought because it's such a serious subject matter, there is a lot more humor in the show that people don't necessarily pick up on. And one of the pieces I really loved was Dave McKenzie's Futuro. And so in the very first show that we did of Speech Acts, there was no hero image. Every artist had their own thing. And we didn't go through and kind of see, because I'd been working with other means on part of this. It's like, there was a trailer with Camila Janan Rashid and Tony Lewis had banners. It was like every artist had their own thing. But with this show, I really wanted this kind of befuddling hero image from Dave McKenzie of this piece Futuro. And on the cover, this is just my favorite cover because there's no, I mean, you have no idea what this book is. Like when you look at it, you don't know it's from a museum. You don't know who the artists are. You just see a bedpan. And anytime I'm in like the New Museum's bookstore, any museum bookstore, and I see it on the shelves, it just cracks me up. It's like this thing that you're just like, I have no idea what this is. And I have no idea even entering the book what it's going to be. Of which it's a full reader and exhibition catalog on Color People Time. And so there's just this way in which it's like 300 and some odd pages. There is no reader to Color People Time, like around the idea of Color People Time in CPT. So I wanted the book to sort of act in that type of way. Everything that I wrote is dated. There's all kinds of like behind the scenes shots. When we filmed this, we had really generous support, or when we were producing this, from the Pew Charitable Trust. And so we shot everything, not just digitally, but also on film. So there was all of these kind of like behind the scenes shots that were on film that we didn't use a lot of them. This is Matthew Angelo Harrison's work. But also creating these kind of like distinct chapters within the full series.
Mm-hmm. And it's just such a beautiful collection of, it feels like research and process and dialogue and artifacts and, you know, things set in space. And it was really ambitious, and I think it came together beautifully. Another great resource, and please seek it out. And then the best spine of all time. Okay, and yes, Ulysses is the most recent and most epic.
So Ulysses is a 3.5-year research project that Aaron Cristoval at the Hammer and I have undertaken. The show's actually opening on Sunday at the Hammer, but we open it first at the ICN Philly. Ulysses Jenkins is kind of the grandfather of Black video art, born and raised in LA. He was a collaborator of Senga Noguchi, David Hammonds, Maren Hassinger. He studied with Chris Burden, Betty Saar, and Charles White. There's like all of this kind of epic history around him. He's never had even a solo exhibition within a museum. And so this is a full retrospective that Aaron and I put together. It's 9.5 hours of video that's substantially edited down from his entire practice with a ton of archival stuff. And then we've produced 2 books for this publication, or for this exhibition.
Yes, so epic amount of research and time and years that went into preparation for this. And we were all so happy that Ulysses had written an autobiography and detailed his whole, you know, life path and history with art. And so this was unique to have as a reference as we were researching, and it was great that it was in his own words. And I think what struck us were things, you know, his connection to the natural world, his generosity, his collaborative nature, his, you know, bringing in people and really seeing multiple perspectives as a huge asset. And then just the level of experimentation, like across all mediums, completely fearless, taking on new technology and just churning out amazing work and doing it in this really immediate way. And I remember, Meg, you had mentioned that Ulysses wasn't somebody that was trying to make anything perfect.
Totally.
And so, you know, that's a little bit, you know, the publication and the identity is informed by that a bit. The other aspect of the research was that we had 30 videos and films to go through and take, you know, grabs. And the nature of video art is that it's really only shown in the context of a gallery or a museum. And so we felt like maybe not a lot of people had seen this work, and we really wanted to try to get as much of it recorded in the book as possible. So this was a real treat to be able to dive deep into his work and to have that kind of access. And then this was a beautiful study that Karina did, just focused on the type alone and the color, and that Ulysses, you know, gave each of the films and the titles such a unique treatment. We pulled a color palette from Without Your Interpretation, but it was just really great to see the type extracted and compared in this way, and to look closely at the moves that had been made. And also not just color, because Meg is really great about wanting color to play an active role, but texture and like the glitchy nature of the video, and kind of taking that and making a palette for the identity that felt complex. So it was color, it was texture, it was multiples, it was photographic images. We just wanted something that felt really varied.
And I think really quick, just as you're showing some of Karina's initial studies, as we were prepping for this presentation, I was thinking so much about like the challenges I had with SpeechX to take a show that I felt a lot of ownership over and then sort of hand it over to Ella to interpret in certain ways. And I realized that now that we've been working together for 5 years, how much you guys have influenced my own process and practice. And so looking at these color stories really early into the production of this show totally influenced how I designed the show. I thought through the layouts. I also returned to the memoir, but you're seeing the same color palettes really throughout the space. It's been a joke on and off that I absolutely hate teal. I think it's like one of the ugliest colors ever. And yet it is so prevalent within Ulysses' work. We tried getting around it. It didn't make sense. So again, sort of leaning into that discomfort and really trusting that Ella kind of knew and interpreted and really thought through Ulysses' practice. And that oftentimes you're going to have to lean into things that aren't your personal taste. I mean, yes. A teal cover, like I did not want that whatsoever, but like at the same time.
It feels so good to remove your personal taste from the equation, because there's so many decisions to be made that you're looking for the ones that kind of make themselves, because you got enough to think about. And so we also feel strongly about kind of pushing back against personal taste or letting that dictate decisions, because then, you know, you've made a choice you can also defend, right? So this is very closely tied to the video that's the namesake of the show. And I think one of the reasons you hated teal was because it had something to do with the sharks.
Oh, it's like such a popular like 90s sports color, like San Jose Sharks, the Marlins. Like there's suddenly this rise. If you look at like uniform design, the 90s gets really into that. But yeah.
I mean, I don't mind it. I remember Aaron didn't mind it as much, but
Aaron loves teal. Yeah.
And
I might add, it's
so-
also quite a Swiss German, a popular color in the kind of Germanic parts of Switzerland and also Germany, just FYI. Teal and magenta, you'll see it in like ski outfits, like in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. And I can't remember if we decided that this book was going to feel maybe a little bit more like it was going to function as a catalog in the way that the others didn't. The others had kind of more interesting relationships or atypical relationships to the exhibition, but we knew we really wanted this to be a volume and a reference. And so, you know, in some respects, it's kind of traditional in that way. I just want to point out this letterhead, Ulysses letterhead, so amazing, coming from this image of him in the tub from this piece. Meg's great text and so many great texts and conversations, roundtable discussions, so plenty there. And then you can kind of see how the texture and the color play a role as dividers in the book, and including not just video, but performance, ephemera. You can see the titles, extracted the titles from the videos and used those as opening pages. And then just the range of work, completely like pure experimental abstraction, things that relate to music and performance. Here's some of those moments where type is kind of coming into the equation.
And really
then,
looking at, sorry, River, to interrupt really quick, but like
ahead.
looking at Ulysses type, like you're really seeing the evolution of video. I mean, the momentous occasion, you're like, Ulysses is literally writing that on a card and filming it in 1973. And then you're actually seeing him moving towards producing type electronically. And so you're seeing this full evolution that also appears across his entire practice.
Yes. And then these amazing live performances that were done via video phone between multiple locations. So people, you know, it being projected at a cafe live while Ulysses is playing music, and then somebody's on a computer collaging imagery on top of it. And just, again, the level of experimentation and the ambition and the kind of bravery, and that this just came very natural to him. And then back into the text, so we get reflections from people who knew him closely, and kind of chronology overview, and then the way that the colors and texture came into the identity for the show. This was an effort to kind of put all of the aspects together that related to multiples and time passing, also just like the color and the vibrancy, but wanting to put Ulysses on eye level with people who were entering into the show. I think that's the last slide. Nope. Republishing his autobiography and not wanting to reinvent it at all, but there's you know, this show, like Color People Time, has multiple publications associated with it. So again, republishing his original autobiography and making that available, written in his own words. Okay.
That's it.
Amazing.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I can't believe in 5 years we've made 6 publications together, which is kind of wild. But thank you guys for having me. I have to run and finish.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meg.
Take care.
Appreciate
Take care.
it.